but singular individuals running incredibly powerful tools that are completely disrupting the way in which societies are interacting, and as a result having geopolitical consequences that neither authoritarians nor democratic systems can control. That's the danger that we are really confronted with, that we see every day in the actually we don't see it. It's in the algorithms that are degenerating what you see and when you don't see, which is why TikTok's not allowed to be used in China. It's why in China they have now erased the internet. A fascinating article in the New York Times the other day that if you wanted to search in China for the earthquake that happened, what was it, 10, 12 years ago, that caused tens of thousands of deaths. You can't find anything in China on the internet about this because it has been erased. So that's government working with technology in order to try to control what they fear themselves can control the CCP and indeed their own society. That is something that frankly we haven't thought about, that kind of danger. And it's very different than, Vladimir Putin. Yes, nuclear weapons are a big deal, not to underestimate, but it's a very dangerous, a different way of thinking. It makes it more difficult for us to figure out how do you deal with that threat and what do you do in order to counter it.
I mean, at the most existential level, what we need are companies to be responsible for the negative externalities that are caused by their business models. We need more capitalism. We can't only have capitalism when companies make profits. We have to have capitalism when companies make losses. They don't get to capture the regulatory system and make the rules that say, no, those losses are on your kids, they're on society. But that's precisely what's happening right now. And that is the way that the American system is most singularly broken as a political system compared to the Europeans or compared to the Chinese, right? I mean, honestly, that is, I think, the biggest danger to our democracy.
Are our U.S. lawmakers equipped to address this? I mean, if you're talking about Congress, and I want to turn to the election after this, but what's your take on that?
Well, usually when I get questions that bring together questions, U.S. lawmakers and equipped, right? I have a knee-jerk reaction. I'm sitting like this, and I feel like you're just hitting the knee, right? But no, they are increasingly aware of these problems, and certainly there has been more effort to, which we've seen in the executive order, but we've seen from people like Senator Warner or others, to try to recognize, identify what the challenges are, at least define them. Right. But do they have the power? And can they move fast enough in an environment where, this isn't like climate change, where we can get it wrong for 30 years, but we can eventually start putting money into new transition energy, and we will eventually get there. Right. No, this is like a matter of 3 to 5 years, where
it's kind of terrifying thinking that our election is in November, the president is in turn for 4 years. So if we have a Trump presidency, I mean, how is that a threat to, if at all, the rules-based international order with his kind of isolationist unilateral worldview? And will he do anything about the threat of disinformation and AI?
Well, it's very interesting because the one thing that we've seen that plays on Trump and technology has been his view on TikTok, which has flipped completely from TikTok should be banned to I will never ban TikTok, because Jeff Yass, the major investor in TikTok, gave him a couple $1 million. So if only we could find some investors that would give him a bunch of money that would say, we want you to actually protect democracy, that might be the best way at it, right? But absent that, look, I more seriously, I am less worried about Trump's foreign policy in many ways, because I don't think he cares as much about foreign policy. And I also think that the people that he is likely to appoint to a cabinet are going to be similar in many ways, because he so controls the GOP. I mean, if you tell me that Pompeo's back, and you tell me that Lighthizer is going to be treasurer, folks like that, I mean, those, you may or may not agree or like them, but they're adults. Yeah. One can understand how they would formulate policy. But when it comes to rule of law in the United States, and when his top priority is enemies are going after me, and I've got to ensure that can never happen again, and I go after them, then I worry much more about the Department of Justice, the FBI, the IRS, like those things. That would be where I think democracy under a Trump administration would be most impacted.
When Ian and I were at the baseball yesterday, Red Sox versus White Sox.
Who won, by the way?
And the Red Sox, 10th inning. And I've, after 10 years living in your country, I finally understand some of the rules. You tell me the cricket is slow. Anyway, so we're out there and we're actually having this conversation, as you do.
Fun baseball talk, yeah.
Yeah, fun baseball talk between hot dogs. And it was, on your core question is, what can legislators and regulators do? The problem is, and not just the United States, but across the democratic world, is the exploding nature of the technology within artificial intelligence, within the algorithms, within generative AI, and then more broadly the supporting platforms in terms of the speed of semiconductors and what they can do, is that the time it takes us to reach a regulatory conclusion within a democracy, usually you have a further explosion on the technological front, which actually renders your original proposed solution redundant, which means that your self-governing regulatory structure across the major corporations is the only thing which stands, frankly, in the road, stands between us and unacceptable levels of social and economic chaos. I think the second challenge is, if the United States, for example, a little like the Europeans in terms of their digital governance laws, was to reach a national consensus, could you actually frame that as being a consensus-based regulatory approach across the democratic world? Possible, but difficult because of the exploding technology factor that I spoke of before. Not through the UN, that's not going to work, but plurilaterally across the democracies, possibly. Thirdly, is any such compact possible with the authoritarian world? I think not, which is why the United Nations negotiations on these questions have ground to a halt, in effect. But I think it is the dynamic nature of the tech, which, as Ian said, climate change is a slowly unfolding train wreck. This is a rapidly unfolding train wreck. And so the question is, how quickly can we, as democracies,
Ivo, do you have a quick point, and then we should go to the slowly unfolding train wreck?